Center continued its warning to citizens and said that the aftermath of the storm surge will be intense. Meanwhile, it is also expected that Idalia should weaken after landfall, but it is likely to still be a hurricane while moving across southern Georgia and near the coast of Georgia and southern South Carolina in the coming few hours. In fact, we are learning from reports that it has reduced in strength, but meteorologists are also pointing to a rare blue supermoon, which could further raise tides above normal levels just as Idalia pounds the coastline. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had urged residents of 23 countries along Florida's Gulf Coast to evacuate and head to shelters or hotels outside the danger zones. Tampa International Airport and other regional airports closed ahead of Idalia's arrival. It's important to note that scientists have warned that storms are becoming more powerful as the world warms due to climate change. Here's before I quickly go over to my guests today.
The International Space to Florida's Gulf Coast, where windows were boarded up and boats were stored on land ahead of the impending storm. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell urged Florida residents to take the hurricane seriously.
This storm is very strong and is expected to strengthen to a major hurricane by the time it makes landfall due to high surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. Very few people can survive being in the path of major storm surge, and this storm will be deadly if we don't get out of harm's way and take it seriously.
The Miami-based National Hurricane Center said the storm was carrying maximum sustained winds of 90 miles per hour Tuesday afternoon and expected the intensity to ratchet higher. Officials have ordered evacuations in low-lying coastal areas. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warned of life-threatening storm surge that could rise as high as 12 feet.
You're there in that storm surge, you're putting your life in jeopardy when it gets to be that high. So if you're giving those orders, please heed those orders. You do not have to leave the state. You don't have to drive hundreds of miles. You have to get to higher ground in a safe structure. You can ride the storm out there, then go back to your home once the storm passes.
In Perry, Florida, inmates from Taylor County's local jail joined the preparation efforts by filling sandbags that were then piled in front of local businesses and homes. Idalia is in line to become the fourth major hurricane to strike Florida over the past 7 years, following Irma in 2017, Michael in 2018, and Ian, which peaked at Category 5 last September.
All right, Chloe Dembrowski, who's the president and CEO of Disaster Recovery Institute International, joins me live. Many thanks to you, Chloe, for joining in. Now, Idalia is the strongest storm to make landfall in the Big Bend region in more than 125 years and is the third hurricane to make landfall in just the last 12 months. Could you give us a sense of the situation on ground level? What's the water level, especially in the Big Bend region where it made landfall?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for having me, first of all. The situation on the ground is evolving rapidly. This is a very fast-moving storm, and we're just now getting reports out of some of the hardest hit areas where maybe there were power outages. Certainly, there is storm surge that is happening, and it's still a dangerous situation on the worked in our favor, which is that the Big Bend is not as populous of a region. That really helped in terms of the built environment and what is in the major path of this storm. And then also the hurricane actually made landfall at low tide. So that really helped the situation with the storm surge. If it had hit at high tide, the storm surge could have been much, much larger. So it actually was really a wonderful thing that the storm surge was happening at low tide. It's still a very active, evolving situation as this hurricane continues to move through. And of course, it's not just what's happening at the center of the hurricane, but what's happening all around there. It needs to stay put, even if the sun is suddenly out and it doesn't look like the storm is still happening. It's very much an active situation. Everybody needs to focus on maintaining their safety first.
Absolutely. Nobody guards down as of now. But let's also talk about the politics surrounding the hurricane now. Chloe, given that we are in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election, we will be looking to see how Governor DeSantis and President Biden cooperate on this issue. All eyes will be watching watching when the governor can put politics aside to do the right thing for the people of Florida. When Hurricane Ian came through, remember, Governor DeSantis got a lot of praise for how he handled himself. Will this give him a needed boost following the first Republican primary debate? Of course, a lot depends on how he navigates the entire situation.
That's right. Of course, is a very important state in any presidential election. It has been trending redder over the last few elections, but it is still definitely considered a swing state. Not only do we have Governor DeSantis there heading the state, but also, former President Donald Trump spends a lot of his time there. So all eyes on Florida. Now, in a situation like this, especially where you have a different party in the office at the federal level, at the presidency, and that at the state level, you're always looking to make sure, can they get together? Can they put politics aside and focus on people and safety first? And both of them have declared that they will do that. President Biden's disaster declaration in advance of this storm even making landfall. So far, they are seemingly putting politics aside and working together. That's usually what happens in this kind of first part of the storm, and then maybe politics happen later. But it is one of the advantages here, which is that in a disaster situation, in a crisis situation, we do come together as a nation and work together, politics aside, because we really have to focus on life and livelihoods and property, and making sure that everybody is okay in that immediate situation.
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to giving a boost to Governor DeSantis in the presidential bid that he's making for 2024, that could happen. He did get high marks for how he performed following Hurricane Ian. He looked presidential. He handled himself well. There was no major crisis. These are always a major test of executive leadership. Any sort of disaster situation, you want to make sure that people are there on the ground.
This is crunch time right now. We're going to major hurricane. It'll be sometime, the eye will arrive on shore sometime tomorrow morning, most likely. And it is going to have major impacts, particularly along Florida's Big Bend region. So listen to your local officials. Take the appropriate precautions to protect you and your family. Everywhere in the Big Bend is going to get storm surge, is going to see major impact, whether the eye wall hitting you or not. So please prepare for that. It is going to be a significant impact to that region of Florida. Now, if you are in an evacuation zone and you've been directed to evacuate low-lying area or coastal area in that Big Bend region, now's the time to do it. This is going to be something that will leave significant impacts, and particularly in this part of the state, you really got to go back to the late 1800s to find a storm of this magnitude that will enter where this one looks like it's going to enter tomorrow. So we don't really have a historical analog in anybody's memory. So it's likely to cause a lot of damage, and that's just the reality. So be prepared for that. Be prepared to lose power, and just know that there's a lot of folks that are going to be there to help you get back on your feet.
So that was Governor DeSantis on Hurricane Idalia, and my guest Chloe continues to stay with me. We are discussing the entire hurricane situation. Remember, not just on what it means in terms of ground level, but also in terms of how the governments can actually ensure better preparedness levels as well. Let's discuss insurance, Chloe. What does this mean for homeowners insurance, and how might that dampen the growth of this economic powerhouse state that Florida is? Is insurance reform necessary and even possible? What should the considerations be when considering how and when to rebuild?
It's a great question. So homeowners insurance is getting increasingly expensive in this state. One of the ways in which Florida is attractive as a place to move and has been growing a lot is because the cost of living is quite affordable, the lifestyle is nice, but if homeowners can't get insurance to cover their investment, that becomes a major problem. They might also not be aware, if they don't come from this state, if they haven't lived there a long time, that they have to purchase their flood insurance separately from their homeowners insurance. So the homeowners insurance is going to cover wind damage, but they need a separate policy for flood insurance. So it becomes really complicated. And then additionally, there have been a number of insurers within the state of Florida who have said, you know, they can't make the economic model work. They're no longer going to insure homeowners. They're going to pull out. This year, it's gotten a little bit better. We think that they're reasonably well capitalized, in part because of an influx of money from the reinsurers that will help to stabilize the market for this storm. But if we get a lot more storms coming up, and that could happen because the Gulf of Mexico is so...
All right, we seem to be having some connection issues with Chloe right now. In the meantime, as we sort it out, let's also play out a report as far as this entire hurricane is concerned, how it's appearing from space. We'll bring you all those visuals before I quickly go over to my next guest, who's a sustainability reporter with The Insider. I'll play out that report before I go over to Catherine. So as you can see, the International Space Station, in fact, captured those images from space. Before I quickly go over to my next guest, Catherine Boudreau, I'm also, in fact, Chloe is back with us. Chloe, finish what you were saying before I quickly take in a question as far as inflation is concerned. Please go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Absolutely. So the insurance situation in Florida is a little bit stabilized because of an influx of money from the reinsurers, but we'll see what happens. We've still got a lot of hurricane season to go. And of course, this is going to get only harder with climate change, more and more intense storms. So insurance is probably likely to need some reform.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to request you to continue staying with me, Chloe. Let me also bring in Catherine Boudreau, who's the sustainability reporter at Insider. Thank you so much, Catherine, for awaiting your turn so patiently. Let's get into the deeper aspects of what makes Idalia so potent. Is it because it's feeding on intensely warm water?
Yes, it's a great question. I mean, we do know that climate change is affecting the intensity and severity of hurricanes. It makes them more intense and destructive. The fossil fuels that we burn around the world release greenhouse gas emissions and, like carbon dioxide and methane. This traps heat in the atmosphere, and it also warms the oceans. So oceans absorb 90% of the extra warming that's occurred due to human activity. So ocean temperatures in Florida, off the coast of Florida, are mirroring hot tub levels right now. So when these storms travel across warm air and water, they can pull in more water vapor and heat. And then when they do make landfall, they end up carrying higher wind speeds and dumping more rainfall. So this just means these storm surges, the amount of water that flows inland is getting worse, and it's putting more people at risk. The storm surge from Hurricane Idalia could rise as high as 15 feet or 4.5 meters in some places.
All right. Catherine, request you to also continue to stay with me. Chloe, when we look at recovery, let me in fact take that question from Chloe. Chloe, let's focus on the recovery aspect. How can states and local communities ensure that coastal communities build back better?
This is a super important aspect of it, and you can actually see how this is playing out now. After Hurricane Andrew in 1992 substantially improved its building code,